Good day and welcome to the MSL podcast. My name is Marco, I'm joined here with Justin. Today we'll be discussing unemployment. So, Justin, tell us, what is unemployment?
Unemployment is a term that refers to active job seekers that are employable but have not found a job or are not finding a job. Now, that is a broad definition, but the key word that I think we should focus on there is active. So, active job seekers. We can't be counting in things like students that are full-time students that are of a working age but are not seeking employment due to being full-time students. And then also stay-at-home parents where we have like one income households where people choose to be unemployed because they're relying on someone else to bring in the money. So we usually have a leeway of 3-4% where we count these kinds of things in. And yeah, that's basically the definition of unemployment.
Okay, so currently we've got a bad state in South Africa of unemployment. Tell us, how bad is that state and what is the percentages like currently?
The important thing is with percentages that we have to remember, we've got to attach a face to a percentage. So for every person counted in our society that is unemployed, you have to remember that's a whole livelihood of the whole person that can't depend on themselves to bring in any money to afford their own needs. Now, unemployment in South Africa is currently sitting at 30%. This is quite a daunting number to think about. 1/3 of all South Africans basically do not have work. And I think that only in the Western Cape and Gauteng are more people employed than actually unemployed. I think it's only us two, and I think Durban's pretty close, KZN. And I think youth unemployment is sitting at 58%. Now, that's a very worrying number because that means that there aren't new jobs being created. As the youth come into the job market, there aren't new jobs for them to be taking up.
So we'll see the true effect of that, not new jobs, in the future.
Yes, so I think in the next 10 to 20 years, these kinds of things are going to become more and more problematic. With things like unemployment, we see large levels of poverty, and we'll see increases in spikes of poverty as the time goes on if we aren't able to fix these issues here and now.
Okay, so we've got this bad problem. Where did this all come from? What's the causes and the driving factors of this unemployment situation in our country?
Well, in a modern context, I believe that we've had a bad era of government and of government mismanagement, corruption. We've had downgradings to junk status. We've had failing state-owned entities. In a bad economy, we've seen certain businesses that might not have thrived but might have survived now suddenly collapsing. If we look at the Edgar's Group, big businesses like that had to cut 22,000 staff members, that might seem like a small portion of the total problem, but it's a large contributor to the problem in a broader sense. And also, if you're looking at it from an economic perspective, when jobs are being lost, it's usually not a good sign for what's happening in the economy. Now, with failing state-owned entities, where Eskom, for example, has a monopoly, there shouldn't be an ability to not be profitable. Now, the fact that they aren't profitable, not expanding and not doing better, not moving into other countries, things like that, just means that more and more people aren't finding new jobs aren't being created. Our government has always spoken about job creation. Personally, I'm not a big believer in job creation as such. I feel that a lesser regulated economy where trade is incentivized rather than taxed so heavily, I believe these kinds of things sort themselves out. You'll tend to find that companies will expand in a prosperous economy, and as such, more and more people will be employed.
Yes.
A good case study for this was, I believe, 2017 or 2018. It was Donald Trump was still president, or was president of the United States, and the economy was booming at a stage, everything was going well, and McDonald's couldn't find workers. Now, everyone notoriously knows in America, if you need a job, you just go to McDonald's. Now, at this stage, McDonald's wasn't finding workers and had to up their wage to start incentivizing more people working there. Now, for me, that is a sign of a very healthy economy. That is a sign that you're reaching economic prosperity. Their unemployment fell below natural unemployment in the States. And in South Africa, when you've got a 30% figure versus the United States, where you're falling behind that kind of level in a country that's 6 times larger than us population-wise, if I'm not mistaken, it's a worrying figure to look at.
Yeah.
I do believe that technology has an impact in all of this. I do believe that automation and stuff, like I said, is a factor, but it's still not an excuse.
Okay. So we've got this big problem. How does government and individuals like ourselves, how do we go forward and mitigate or lessen the effect of the problem, and then how do we solve it?
Well, there's never a simple answer to solving a complex issue, but what I like to do is I like to unpack an issue. So I like to find where is the issue starting from, where is it stemming from, and how do we tackle those micro tasks. See, with running a government, it's obviously a big ship. How are you going to know what's broken? You've got to take things apart, you've got to see what's happening. I believe education is one of those focal points that we really need to focus on. I believe that we need to have an overhaul of our education system in a sense that we restore that respect back to the National Senior Certificate. I think that too many people, even with the National Senior Certificate, have got no options.
Yes.
That is very worrying because that's meant to be a benchmark of where your country stands. Then we've got bigger issues, which are people not finishing 5th grade, not finishing 9th grade, not finishing 10th grade. And then what is out there for you? Going to go look for a job at 16 years old? What are you looking at? Labor jobs, hard labor jobs? There are only so many. Now, when a large percentage of your population is not finishing their education, then it shows that there is an issue already. And our education department thinks that it's feasible to just keep dropping the rate or pass rate in order to get more people with the National Senior Certificate to make them more employed, but sadly that's kind of like printing money when you don't have it. It has the same kind of correlation and effect. And that's the big issue, is really solving education in our country. There's a lack of skilled labor. Why is there a lack of skilled labor? Because we don't have technical schools, right? You can't just have academic schools for everybody. I understand everyone wants to do maths, everyone wants to do science, but that's just not the reality. Some people aren't academically inclined. Some people are more technically inclined. Gone are the days where you can go, oh, well, you know, you're going to be a tinker on the railways if you go to a technical school. No, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need those kinds of jobs as well. Engineering is such a hot field at the moment. I feel like they could even prioritize certain levels of engineering in technical schools. That's a big thing that I feel very strongly about, prioritizing our technical schools, and then ensuring that people stay in school. Now, how do we ensure people stay in school? Provide them a meal at school, right? Especially now, more disadvantaged communities. There's no access to running water. There's no toilets at schools, as we uncovered recently when they were talking about the reopening of schools. They did an audit and they found that like certain schools didn't even have bathrooms, working bathroom facilities. You can't have 50 kids crammed into a classroom and expect it to be an adequate learning environment. I even found in a classroom of 30 people that sometimes I didn't concentrate as well as what I would have in a classroom of 10, 15. So we can't have a failing education system and expect people to want to go to school. I wouldn't want to go to school under those circumstances either. And then on top of that, you can't have kids running on empty stomachs trying to go and learn either. So there needs to be that incentivization for them to have a safe space where they can go to school, where they can educate themselves, where they can better themselves. I feel like that's the first step. The second step from there is I feel that government needs to encourage entrepreneurship, encouraging innovation by investing in these kinds of things. I don't believe that you can solve a country's unemployment stats by putting people into places when there's no meritocracy involved. So have investment schemes into entrepreneurs. Make sure that it's previously disadvantaged people. Ensure that you're teaching adequate financial literacy. I'm sure you understand the importance of financial literacy and how bad it actually is in our country, where even businessmen that have had certain businesses, maybe in trade industries for 20, 30 years, go and take out loans when they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, things like this. And That's also a big problem. It's something not taught enough at school. Things like taxes, how taxes work, definitely not taught enough at school. Digital literacy programs, again, comes back into the same thing, educating people to help them better themselves. So that you don't have to go and sit there and go, where can I create jobs? Where can I incentivize jobs? How am I going to create jobs? Trying to get more tax money to solve these issues is another big issue, because we have a progressive tax table. So the top of the progressive tax table is very heavily taxed, and you can't really squeeze that much more out of them. There just isn't that much more to squeeze. We saw when Donald Trump, for example, cut the tax rate in the States, they started giving workers certain benefits and paying workers certain amounts.
Yeah.
Why? Because they were saving a lot of money in tax. Now people think, oh, well, how much tax do they really pay? It's crazy the amount of money they even spend just to mitigate their tax, like spend every year on the top accountants and things like that, because you really are paying a lot of tax as a big company, for example. Now, we can't keep squeezing people for every tax dollar that we can get or every tax cent that we can get here in the country, because not enough of that actually goes back into the economy, firstly, and secondly, it disincentivizes trade. So it means that people are less likely to expand when they're more likely, or when they have to pay more tax. So why you go, okay, well, you say, oh, we need social grants, we need all these kinds of things to fix people, to help them with their livelihoods, but that's not really solving an issue. That's just keeping people alive because you're desperate, you've got no other option. Now, I feel like obviously we need to tackle government corruption, mismanagement, and those things in a separate, it's a separate issue, obviously, but that is a large area where a lot of money is going, a lot of tax money is going, instead of being reinvested into the economy. So yeah, reinvestment into the economy, to put it simply, is where government has failed us, and where we need to apply more pressure for accountability in terms of looking at the government as a leader.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for joining us. Please feel free to subscribe and like this video, and then we'll see you again in 2 weeks.